They said she wasn't ready, that she was too soft, too slow, too different. Lieutenant Commander Ava Brooks, one of the Navy's top pilots, had spent her entire career trying to prove she belonged among legends, the SEALs who trusted no one outside their own. But when a covert mission deep inside hostile territory went wrong, those same men found themselves surrounded, cut off, and abandoned. 24 of America's finest, trapped behind enemy lines. No air cover, no extraction, no chance, until the woman they once doubted heard their distress call. And while command debated protocols and politics, Ava made her choice. She would fly, alone, unarmed, and into the jaws of death, to bring them home. This is not a story of orders followed. It's a story of trust earned the hard way, and the woman who risked everything for the brothers who once turned their backs on her night over the corral. Mountains was blacker than sin. No moon, no stars. Only the low hum of radio static. SEAL Team Echo was supposed to be invisible, a surgical in-and-out operation to capture a high-value target, a rogue arms broker supplying enemy states. But nothing went as planned. Their intel was compromised. The target was waiting. As soon as they breached the compound, mortars rained from the ridgelines. 2 transport trucks exploded before they could retreat. Their comms were jammed. Within minutes, they were boxed in. 24 men fighting through smoke and chaos, outnumbered 10-1. Captain Jack Rains, the kind of man legends were written about, barked orders through the mayhem. His team moved like ghosts, efficient, fearless. But even ghosts bleed when cornered. By dawn, they were running low on ammo, pinned inside a canyon with no air support. Command had gone silent. The last transmission they received, extraction denied. "You're on your own." Rains looked around at his men, bruised, bloodied, still ready to fight. But deep down, he knew this was it. And then, faint through the static, a voice broke through the noise. Calm, steady, unmistakable. "This is Angel 1. Coordinates locked. Hold your ground. I'm coming for you." The men froze. They knew that. Voice. Lieutenant Commander Ava Brooks, the same pilot they had mocked during training runs, the one they said would never last a day in real combat, the one they'd refused to trust. Now, she was the only one still listening. The airfield was silent, except for the rain hissing against steel and concrete. Rows of aircraft sat chained down, dark and obedient, waiting for orders that would never come. In the tower, red lights blinked like tired eyes. Somewhere in that stillness, Ava Brooks paced the floor, helmet in hand, rage boiling under her calm exterior. Command had made its decision. Stand down. Satellite feeds showed enemy armor closing on the canyon. The analysts called it a non-recoverable scenario. To them, 24 SEALs were just numbers in a file marked MIA. To Ava, they were faces she knew. Men who had once laughed at her in the mess hall, who rolled their eyes when she offered backup on exercises, men who now had no one else. She stared at the operations map glowing on the wall. The canyon coordinates pulsed red, a heartbeat of desperation. Her headset crackled with the last snippet of Rains's voice. "If anyone's out there, tell my family I fought to the end." Ava closed her eyes. "Not yet, Captain." She turned to the flight crew chief. "Prep the Black Hawk," the chief blinked. "Ma'am, we don't have clearance." "Then don't log it." He hesitated, searching her face. What he saw there made him swallow hard. "Aye, ma'am." Within 20 minutes, the helicopter roared to life. The storm intensified, wind howling across the tarmac. Ava climbed into the cockpit, flicked switches, felt the vibration through her boots. Her co-pilot jogged up, rain streaking down his visor. "Ava, are you sure about this? You go in there alone. They'll court-martial you." She gave a thin smile. "Only if I come back." Before he could argue, she sealed the canopy. The rotor blades blurred overhead, chopping rain into mist. She throttled up and whispered under her breath, "Hang on, boys. Angel 1's inbound." The Black Hawk lifted into the night, slicing through the storm like a blade. The clouds swallowed her whole. Lightning flashed across the cockpit, painting her face in white and shadow. Instruments flickered, warning lights blinked, but her hands were steady on the controls. Below, the mountain range stretched like the spine of a beast, valleys filled with fog and fire. Enemy radar towers swept the skies. If she was caught, she'd never make it home. She cut power, dropped altitude, and flew nap of the earth, skimming just feet above treetops. The Black Hawk shook violently, branches scraping the belly. She kept her breathing slow, every nerve wired to the machine. The radio hissed again, a broken fragment from Rains. "We're still here." "Ammo low. They're closing in." Ava's pulse kicked. She was 20 miles out. Back at HQ, alarms erupted. The tower had picked up her signal. Who the hell authorized Angel 1? A colonel barked. No one answered. They tried to call her back. She killed the comms. She didn't need orders now. She needed a miracle. Every few miles, she dropped countermeasures, flares that painted the clouds orange. Her eyes flicked between radar and terrain. She knew every ridge, every valley. She'd flown them 100 times in simulations. Never like this.
You go in
through the
there
static,
alone.
a voice
They'll
came.
court-martial you.
"Angel 1. This is Echo Team." "Is that really you?" Ava grinned despite herself. "Copy that, Echo Team. Keep your heads down." "I'm 10 clicks out." A pause, then laughter, weary but real. "Damn, they sent you?" She let the sarcasm slide. "You're welcome." Searchlights pierced the fog ahead, enemy patrols sweeping the ridgelines. She banked hard, killing the lights, heart hammering. Tracers streaked past the windshield. She dove behind a ridge, the world exploding above her. The impact of near misses rattled the hull. One engine warning light flared amber. She ignored it. Through the windshield, she saw the canyon open up, and the faint flashes of gunfire where the SEALs were making their stand. "Gotcha," she whispered. She couldn't land. Too hot. Too many hostiles. So she hovered, nose down, 30 feet above the ground. Dust and debris whipped into a hurricane below. Through the rotor wash, she saw them, silhouettes in torn combat gear, waving, shouting, some limping, some dragging wounded. "Angel 1, you're early for the funeral." Rains's voice came through, half laughing, half crying. "Sorry, Captain," she shot back. "You'll have to reschedule." She dropped the rope ladders, flares, and ammo crates in rapid succession. Then, switching to external cameras, she saw movement on the ridge, enemy armor repositioning. If she left now, they'd be overrun. So she stayed. Ava angled the Black Hawk sideways, using the mounted minigun to lay suppressive fire. The air filled with thunder. Explosions lit the canyon. Her ammo count bled away fast. "Angel 1, get out of there!" Rains yelled. "Negative!" she barked back. "You move first." Below, the SEALs hauled their wounded onto the ladders one after another. Bullets ricocheted off armor plating. A round cracked the windshield, glass spiderwebbing across her view. She didn't blink. Finally, the last man climbed aboard. Rains swung himself in, panting. "All accounted for." "Copy that," Ava said. "Hold on to something." She slammed the throttle. The Black Hawk lurched upward, climbing into gunfire. The engines screamed. Bullets chased them through the night. And then, with one last burst of speed, they cleared the ridge into open sky. The cabin was chaos. Men shouting, tending wounds, laughing in disbelief. Rains staggered to the cockpit, gripping her seat. "I don't believe it," he said quietly. "They said you couldn't handle combat." Ava glanced at him, sweat streaking her soot-covered face. "Guess they were wrong." He nodded slowly. "Guess they were." Lightning flashed again, painting both of them in silver. The storm swallowed their laughter. That night, 24 SEALs lived to fight another day, because the one woman they once doubted refused to let them die. The Black Hawk roared through the storm, blades thrashing the air like an angry beast. Inside, every bolt and rivet seemed to vibrate with strain. The smell of gunpowder and oil filled the cabin. The men were alive, but barely. Some sat slumped against the fuselage, blood-soaked bandages pressed to their arms and legs. Others worked frantically to stabilize the wounded. The adrenaline of survival was already fading, replaced by the dawning horror that they weren't safe yet. Captain Rains leaned toward the cockpit. "How far to friendly airspace?" Ava glanced at her radar. 20 miles, Rains frowned. "That's not far." "It is when the sky's full of things trying to kill you," she replied. Lightning flickered through the storm clouds, and then something else. A flash of metal, a second shadow cutting across the radar screen. Ava's stomach dropped. "Bogey at our 6, she said. The seals froze. "What is it?" Rains asked. She twisted a dial, sharpening the signal. "Gunship. Fast mover. They must have scrambled it when I broke into their airspace." The radio crackled with static and foreign chatter. Then, through the haze, 2 streaks of fire sliced past the window. Warning shots. "They've locked on," Ava muttered. The gunship appeared out of the clouds like a predator, its searchlights cutting through rain, its cannons glowing orange. Ava yanked the Blackhawk hard left, and the world turned sideways. The men inside grabbed for handholds, shouting as loose gear flew. "Hold on," she yelled, voice steady despite the chaos. Tracer rounds tore through the air where they'd been seconds before. The sky exploded with thunder and flak. Rains climbed into the co-pilot's seat, strapping in. "You've got countermeasures, right?" "2 flares left," she said. "2? That's it? Make them count." The Blackhawk dove into a canyon, rain slashing against the windshield. The walls blurred past, barely a few meters wide. The enemy gunship followed, flooding the canyon with searchlight glare. The engines screamed in protest. "Angel 1, you're gonna kill us," Rains shouted. "Not if I kill them first." She dumped flares. Twin blossoms of fire erupted behind them, drawing the first missile away. The explosion painted the canyon walls in white light. 1 missile left. 1 flare. She banked right, hugging the canyon wall, trying to break radar lock. But the gunship stayed glued to them, its engine roar echoing off the cliffs. Her warning lights screamed red. Fuel was low. The helicopter couldn't take much more punishment. "Captain," she said through gritted teeth, "strap everyone in tight." He glanced at her. "What are you doing?" "Ending this." She yanked the stick forward, dropping altitude fast. The Blackhawk dove toward a river that wound like a silver vein through the gorge. The gunship followed, missiles armed. At the last possible second, Ava pulled up, skimming the river surface so close that water exploded in their wake. She twisted, looped between 2 jagged rock spires, and the pursuing gunship tried to follow. It clipped 1 spire. A single spark turned into a blossom of fire. The explosion ripped through the canyon, shockwaves slamming into the Blackhawk. Ava fought the controls, knuckles white, teeth gritted. The gunship was gone. But so was her left engine. Warning klaxons blared. The helicopter pitched sideways, smoke pouring from the turbine. Rains shouted, "We're losing power." "I know." Ava snapped, hands flying over controls. "Hold on." The Blackhawk dropped like a stone, spinning toward the valley floor. The seals braced, shouting prayers and curses into the storm. Ava fought every instinct screaming at her to pull up too early. She waited, and then flared the nose just before impact. The chopper slammed into a clearing, skidding through mud and debris. Trees shattered. Sparks flew. Then, silence. Only the sound of rain. The men groaned, coughing through smoke. Somehow, miraculously, they were alive. Rains unstrapped himself, staggered to his feet. "Everyone sound off!" Voices answered from the dark. 24, battered but breathing. He turned to the cockpit. Ava was still in her seat, head bowed, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. Her hands were locked on the controls, shaking. He reached for her. "Ava?" She blinked, groggy, then focused on him. "All accounted for?" "Yeah," he said, voice thick. "Because of you," she exhaled, a shaky half-laugh escaping. "Then I'll call that a good landing." Hours later, as dawn bled into the clouds, rescue birds from HQ finally appeared, a swarm of silhouettes against the sunrise. They'd tracked the Blackhawk's transponder, which Ava had switched on moments before the crash. When the seals were lifted out, muddy and bloodied, they refused to board until Ava was carried first. Rains helped load her stretcher. As medics worked around them, she grabbed his arm weakly. "Next time," she murmured, "you can doubt me after the mission." Rains smiled, shaking his head. "You're insane, you know that?" "Yeah," she whispered, eyes closing. But it worked. From the rescue chopper, Rains looked down at the wreckage of the Blackhawk, broken, smoking, half buried in mud. That image would never leave him. nor would the sound of her voice cutting through static the moment hope returned to 24 men who thought they were already dead. The radio crackled again. HQ to Angel 1. Status? Rains pressed the button, eyes on Ava as she slept under a blanket of bandages. Mission accomplished, he said quietly. And Command, you owe someone an apology. That night in the debriefing room, when Command asked how she'd managed to survive enemy pursuit with a crippled aircraft, Ava just smiled. Guess you can't kill an angel in her own sky. The storm had passed, but its echoes lingered in every corridor of the base. The air smelled of fuel and antiseptic, the sharp scent of a night that should have ended in tragedy, but didn't. Outside the medical bay, 24 men stood guard, unshaven, battered, uniforms torn and streaked with dirt. They weren't standing by orders. They were standing by choice. Inside, behind a curtain, Lieutenant Commander Ava Brooks lay still, her shoulder in a sling, her forehead stitched where glass had cut her. She'd been unconscious for 16 hours. Captain Rains sat beside her bed, elbows on his knees, exhaustion carved into his face. The man who once called her just another pilot hadn't moved since the medics brought her in. When Ava finally woke, the first thing she heard wasn't the beeping of machines. It was voices outside her door. Angry voices. Reckless, insubordinate, direct violation of protocol. The speaker was Colonel Harland, her superior, a man who believed rules were the spine of war. She flew into enemy territory without authorization, he barked. Stole a Black Hawk, engaged hostiles, destroyed U.S. property. Rains stepped through the doorway before the colonel could finish. His voice was gravel. That destroyed property saved 24 lives, sir. The colonel spun. Captain, you're out of line. With respect, sir, Rains said, standing nose to nose with him. So was Command, when you abandoned us. The hallway went silent. Rains continued, quieter now. We were written off. She brought us home. If that's insubordination, then maybe we need more of it. The colonel's jaw worked, but he had no answer. Hours later, when things finally quieted down, Rains slipped back into the infirmary. Ava was awake now, pale but alert, her eyes tracking him as he entered. He stood awkwardly for a moment, then said, You really don't know how to make things easy, do you? Ava smirked weakly. If I did, you'd still be in that canyon. Rains chuckled, then sat beside her. The silence stretched between them, comfortable this time. Finally, he said, You know, when you first joined the ops unit, we thought you were soft. Too calm, too clean-cut. We figured you wouldn't last a week. I remember, she said. You didn't exactly hide it. Yeah, he admitted. We were wrong. He leaned back, arms folded. You ever think about why you did it? You could have waited for orders. You could have walked away. She met his eyes. Because I knew you wouldn't have left me. The next morning, Command assembled a tribunal to review Ava's actions. The room was filled with uniforms, brass on every collar. At one end sat the panel of officers. At the other, Ava, still in bandages, uniform crisp but sleeves hiding fresh stitches. She refused a lawyer. I'll speak for myself, she'd said. The colonel began his case with cold precision. Lieutenant Commander Brooks acted against direct orders, resulting in the destruction of a U.S. aircraft and the unauthorized engagement of foreign forces. Her actions. The doors to the room opened. 24 SEALs entered, boots echoing like thunder. They didn't ask permission. They didn't salute. They just walked straight down the aisle and stood behind her, shoulder to shoulder. Rains spoke first. Her actions saved our lives. Every single one of us. That's the only report you need. Another SEAL stepped forward, voice steady. We'd all be body bags right now if not for her. One by one they spoke. Short, blunt, soldiers' words that cut through the bureaucratic noise. The colonel tried to interrupt. This hearing is not open to testimony. Rains slammed his hand on the table. Then court-martial us all. The panel looked at the row of decorated warriors behind her, men with medals, scars, and reputations carved in blood. None moved. None blinked. The colonel sat down, defeated. After hours of closed discussion, the panel returned with its verdict. Colonel Harland read from the document, his voice dry. Lieutenant Commander Ava Brooks is officially reprimanded for procedural violations. He paused, and awarded the Navy Cross for valor above and beyond the call of duty. A murmur rippled through the room. Ava blinked. Wait, what? Harland looked up at her, expression unreadable. You disobeyed an order, Commander, but you did it for the right reason. Rains grinned from the back. Damn right she did. For the first time in her career, every man in the room saluted her, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. That night, the base mess hall was louder than it had been in months. 24 SEALs and one pilot sat crowded around a single table, the air thick with laughter and clinking glasses. Rains raised a glass of whiskey. To Angel 1, the woman we doubted, the pilot who proved us wrong. The men echoed, To Angel 1. Ava rolled her eyes but couldn't help smiling. You realize this is highly unprofessional. Good, Rains said. We're SEALs, not politicians. Laughter broke out. For a moment, the weight of war lifted. In that dimly lit room, amid the scars and bruises, something unspoken bound them together, a respect that had been earned the hard way. Later, when the crowd thinned, Rains found Ava outside by the flight line. The night was clear, stars reflected in puddles on the tarmac. The wrecked Black Hawk sat in the distance, its body scorched but intact, a silent monument to defiance. Rains joined her quietly. They're rebuilding her, you know. HQ says they'll name her Resilience, Ava smirked. Fitting, yeah, he said softly. So's her pilot. They stood in silence, listening to the hum of generators and the whisper of the wind. For the first time in a long while, neither of them felt like they were carrying the war alone. 3 months after the tribunal, the dust of the Coral Mountains had barely settled when orders came again. The same region, the same enemy network, a new operation, codenamed Iron Echo. For most pilots, it would have been a nightmare to return to the place that almost killed them. For Ava Brooks, it was unfinished business. She stood on the tarmac beside her rebuilt Black Hawk, Resilience gleaming in the morning light, as the same 24 SEALs approached. No longer skeptics. No longer strangers. They walked as a unit. Her unit. Inside the briefing hall, the screens glowed with maps and intel feeds. Colonel Harland was there again, stiffer than usual, but something in his tone had changed, a hint of respect he didn't show before. This is a strike and rescue, he said. Satellite imagery shows our missing diplomatic team held in a compound 2 miles from your previous crash site. Minimal intel on defenses. We need precision, speed, and air support you can trust. His eyes met Ava's. He nodded. Angel 1, you have command of air ops. No sarcasm. No doubt, just trust. The room was quiet until Rains grinned. Well, guess we're following the Angel back into hell. The mountains rose beneath them again, ghostly in the moonlight. Every ridge and canyon was a memory. Ava could almost see the fire where she'd crashed months before. Feels weird being back here, Rains said through the headset. Yeah, Ava replied, eyes on her instruments. Like visiting a grave you walked out of, the radio crackled. Angel 1, this is Echo Team, wheels down in 3. Copy that, she answered. Eyes on you. Below, the SEALs fast roped into darkness. Ava held Resilience steady, her blades whipping dust and shadows. The enemy was ready this time. Gunfire flared from the tree line, tracer rounds cutting through the night. The radio burst with shouts. We're taking fire! Multiple tangos, East Ridge! Ava spotted muzzle flashes and swung the chopper around, firing rockets into the ridge. The explosions lit the valley like daylight. Angel 1, you're in the open, Rains warned. Yeah, she said. So they look at me instead of you. She dropped flares to blind the snipers, then pivoted sideways, hovering just above the treetops. Her machine gunner unloaded a belt of lead into the enemy's position. Seconds later, Rains' voice came through. Compound secure. Package in hand. Requesting pickup! Ava set the bird down in a clearing so tight it barely fit the rotor span. The SEALs emerged from smoke and chaos, carrying 2 wounded hostages. The moment they were aboard, she pulled up hard. but something caught her eye. A missile launcher. "On the ridge. Hold tight," she shouted. The Blackhawk jerked left as a missile streaked past. It missed, barely. "Angel 1, you good?" She gritted her teeth. Not done yet. A second missile locked on. Her hand moved without thinking. Flare release, sharp climb, nose down turn. The missile followed the heat flare and vanished in a distant blast. Cheers erupted in the cabin. Ava didn't smile. She was already lining up the return path. When they cleared the mountain range, HQ came alive on the comm. "Angel 1, Echo Team. Mission status?" Rains answered, breathless but grinning. "Target rescued. All personnel alive. And for the record, sir, we followed the same woman you once doubted, and she brought us home again." Silence from HQ. Then a simple reply. "Copy that. Welcome home." Back on base, the hangar was flooded with light as Resilience landed. Ava powered down the engines slowly, the rotors whining to a halt. When she stepped out, the entire SEAL unit was waiting. Rains walked up first, helmet tucked under his arm. "Twice now, Angel 1. You keep making us look bad." Ava smiled tiredly. "Guess you'll just have to keep up." He offered his hand, not as a formality, but as a promise. She shook it, grip firm. Behind them, the men cheered. No orders, no rank, just respect. Days later, the news broke. Operation Iron Echo, all hostages rescued, no losses. The photo that accompanied it showed Ava stepping off her Blackhawk, helmet under her arm, face smeared with grease and dust. Caption: "The angel they once doubted." Within weeks, new female pilots arrived for training, each one knowing her name. Some called her a hero, others called her a myth. She didn't care for either. All she ever wanted was to fly, and to make sure no one was left behind again. One evening, Ava stood alone beside Resilience. The sunset bled red and gold across the rotor blades. Rains walked up quietly, hands in his pockets. "Command's talking about grounding you for a bit," he said. She laughed softly. "They can try," he nodded. "Thought you'd say that." As the lights of the base flickered on, a radio nearby crackled to life. "A distress signal. Another unit in trouble." Ava looked at Rains. He just smiled. "You heard the lady. Spin her up." And once again, the blades of Resilience screamed into motion, cutting through the night, an angel returning to the fire. The ocean stretched endlessly beneath the rising sun, calm, golden, and deceptively peaceful. Somewhere below, aircraft carriers drifted like steel giants, and high above, a Blackhawk helicopter sliced through the clouds, her rotors whispering the name that had become legend: Resilience. It had been a year since Coral, a year since 24 men refused to let one woman stand alone at her trial, a year since the world learned her name: Lieutenant Commander Ava Brooks, call sign Angel 1. The hangar was dressed for ceremony: flags, banners, rows of uniforms pressed to perfection. Cameras lined the walls, flashing like stars as the Secretary of the Navy took the stage. When Ava stepped forward, the applause was deafening. She wore her dress blues, every stripe and ribbon gleaming, but her left hand still bore a faint scar, a reminder of what she'd paid for those colors. The Secretary's voice rang through the hall. For acts of valor above and beyond duty, and for saving the lives of 24 U.S. Navy SEALs under impossible circumstances, Lieutenant Commander Ava Brooks is hereby awarded the Silver Star and Distinguished Flying Cross. He pinned the medal to her chest. The crowd erupted. But what mattered most to her were the faces in the front row. Rains and his men standing tall, pride glowing in their eyes. Ava gave a short nod. They returned it. No words needed. Later that week, a journalist from Global Defense Review sat across from her in the officers' lounge. "You've been called a hero, a symbol, even an angel," the reporter said. "What do you call yourself?" Ava smiled faintly. "A pilot who broke too many rules. But those rules saved lives." She sipped her coffee, eyes distant. "Maybe, but I didn't fly to be remembered. I flew because someone had to." The journalist hesitated, then asked, "Would you do it again?" Ava looked up. gaze sharp and unwavering. Every damn time, months passed. Command offered her a promotion, a desk, and a quiet life in Washington. She turned it down flat. Instead, she asked to return to the Naval Aviation Training Center. Not to fly every mission, but to teach others how to. Her first day on the tarmac, a group of young cadets stood waiting, a mix of men and women, nervous and eager. One of them, a young woman with short hair and bright eyes, stepped forward. "Ma'am," she said, "is it true you flew into Coral alone?" Ava grinned. "No," the cadet blinked. "But the reports—" "I had 24 reasons not to die that night," Ava interrupted. "No one flies alone. Remember that." That winter, Rains and his SEALs returned from deployment. They found Ava still on base, running drills at dawn, shouting commands over the roar of engines. He watched her from the edge of the runway, shaking his head. "You're supposed to be retired," she smirked. "And you're supposed to listen to orders." He laughed, walking beside her. Some things never change. The team joined them for dinner that night, the same battered group that had once doubted her. They traded stories, laughter echoing through the hangar. At one point, Rains raised his glass. "To Angel 1, for teaching a bunch of stubborn men that trust can fly." Ava shook her head. "To resilience," she corrected, "because that's what saved us all." Weeks later, a letter arrived from the Pentagon. It was simple, handwritten, rare these days. "Commander Brooks, your actions and leadership have reshaped the standards of naval aviation and special operations integration. Future rescue doctrine will now include independent pilot discretion under emergency conditions, informally known as the Angel Protocol. You've changed the rules for the better." Admiral Scott Haleva read it once, folded it neatly, and tucked it into her flight log, the same one she'd carried the night she saved the SEALs. One early morning, before the sun crested the horizon, Ava stood beside Resilience once more. The old helicopter had been repainted, upgraded, and recommissioned, but her name still gleamed across the fuselage. A new call came through the radio. A distress signal from a remote island, a team stranded after a failed extraction. Rain's voice came through the comms, calm and steady. "Angel 1, you on station." Ava smiled beneath her helmet. "Always, Captain. Let's bring them home." And with that, she lifted off into the dawn, blades slicing the mist, her shadow stretching long across the sea. Years later, stories of her missions would become legend among recruits. Some said she flew through storms that grounded entire fleets. Others swore she once landed a crippled bird on one engine and a prayer. The truth didn't matter. What mattered was what she represented, not perfection. Not glory, but courage, the kind that flies into fire when everyone else turns away. At the Naval Aviation Museum, a display case still stands, her flight helmet, her medals, and a simple plaque beneath. Lieutenant Commander Ava Brooks, Angel 1. When others doubted, she flew. And if you listen closely, on quiet nights over the training fields, pilots still swear they can hear the faint echo of rotor blades, and a woman's voice over the radio, calm and steady. "Hold your ground. I'm coming for you."